Hi, I'm going to show you my workflow for doing multicam editing in Premiere using my Riverside FM content. Now I'm just going to go through a list of what I do first because we want to keep going over this a few different times until this video is going to be more philosophical than many videos. I'll just say do this, do this, do this. I'm going to try and get you to understand what's going on behind the scenes because in my experience, I haven't understood some of that, and then I've gone to do something, and it ended in disaster. I was pulling my hair out. So I'm going to tell you things I wish I knew when I started. Even though it might seem like it's getting into the weeds, I feel that this time that you invest will pay off. The first thing I do is I get my audio channels right as soon as possible. It's sort of difficult to deal with audio channels in Premiere once you're starting to edit. So as soon as I import them, I make sure I basically have left and right channels the same thing because my guests are just speaking in mono essentially. So anyway, I don't want to have a thing where I'm going to output the video and they're only in one ear. The warning I need to give is that the Premiere Multicam Wizard hides part of the process that can lead you to things that you can't or shouldn't do. And I'm going to show you an example of that. Now, in all multicam editing, there are two components of every edit which I believe is important for you to understand. The first is that you're going to have a synchronized nest of your cameras. Generally, you synchronize these through the audio channels. And you can think of these as sort of like pushing all the content that you have or that you might want to use. The second is a timeline sequence where you pick which each source from your nest you can output to the viewer. And that's sort of like your pull. And you're going to want to name things in a way that you can quickly identify them. And now this is of paramount importance to me. In my opinion, Premiere doesn't default name things well, and it gets me confused. So you really want, as soon as you create something, name it in a way that you can quickly identify it. Otherwise, if you just use your default names, you're going to look at your assets and be like, which is which, what's what. And then I'm going to really go into the process of when I do what, where, and when. So the order I follow is 1, get the audio channels right. 2, synchronize my clips and mute those that I don't want. 3, create a sequence where I pick what cameras I want to show at any given time. And then 4, and this took me a while to learn, then go back to the source and fix or improve the audio for each guest. Or color correction. I don't do that, but if I was going to do it, I was going to do it there. So basically that's a rundown of how I do it. And now I'm going to take you into Premiere and show you. Okay, here are 3 clips that I downloaded from Riverside FM, and I've renamed them Camera 1 Max because I'm the host, Camera 2 Craig, and the Camera 3, which is a side-by-side clip that Riverside FM will generate for you, which I find very useful. So I'm going to drag these all into our project. So I'm going to pick these clips, and I'm going to create multi-camera source sequence. Now, I'm just following what you'll see in other YouTube explanations generally. So in custom, I'm going to call this multicam source, which will become a little bit more obvious later why I'm doing that. I'm going to sync using the audio of all the channels. I'm going to move the source clips to the process bin. That just creates a folder here and puts them there. Just tidies up your project thing, but you don't have to do it. If you don't do it, these things will stay right here. And I'm going to do enumerate track cameras because that's easier just to pick the cameras. These default settings are just fine. So now Premiere is going through each clip and it's using the audio to sync them up. Then what you'll see on the internet is they'll say, okay, take your multicam source, I'm calling it source, but say take your multicam sequence and drag it onto the timeline. And it's actually hiding something that it's doing, and I'll explain to you what it's hiding. So generally, you'll take this and you'll pick your multi-camera view. You'll start playing it, and you'll pick your cameras. Like for me, I start talking, and then you can see my waveform right here on the top, and then Craig will start talking. Actually. Waiting for him to start. There he goes. He starts talking. But generally, the way I do this is I'll go before each thing, and I'll do a Control K, which will select all the clips and create a cut point so I can just use my waveform to figure out when I'm talking and when he's talking. And I'll do this. But let's just say I only went halfway through. In fact, this is exactly what happened to me one day. I'm halfway through. I'm like, oh, he sounds really noisy. So I want to fix his audio. So I go on the internet and I research this. Oh, you can open this on the timeline. You can't see it. It says open in timeline. It's out of the capture window. But anyway, so open this in the timeline. You can fix the audio there. So I go to his clip. So here's Craig. I go to his audio. I go up into the essential sound and I pick dialogue, clean up noisy dialogue, which generally works. Great. I listen to it. I'll mute these these other tracks. I listen to it. Good. It's doing a great job. I unmute my tracks. I go back to my edit and my waveforms are gone. So I just pulled out my hair. I go on the internet. How do you fix it? I can never find like a full fix. And it just drove me crazy. And that's why I mentioned before that the order in which you do things is very important in multicam editing. Fortunately, we can go back to our source. We could take out the noisy dial, the fix here, and we go back into our edit. The waveforms are back. So I go in and I continue doing my edits. I'm just going to do this very quickly here. Control K. I just want to get them sort of close. And then what I can do, well, at least this is the fastest way I find of doing this Riverside interview type things, is okay. So in the beginning, I just start, because things come online at different times. So I pick myself right here. And this is me. And then, I'll wait till Craig starts talking. Which is going to be about, I can just see it was the waveform right here. And actually, I'm a little bit too early, but that's okay. And then Craig will be talking. And actually, I can just now go to each thing here, pick me. You can't just drag the playhead over it. You actually have to pick the scene. So it's Craig. Pick me. It's Craig. I notice I missed a cut here, right here. So I'm going to go over here. Control K. And here is going to be me. And I'm going to drag over this to make sure it's making the right cuts. That should be me. This should be me, right? This should be Craig. This should be me. Whoa, wait, why isn't this me? Oh, it is me, okay. This should be Craig. Good. Takes a little while, I guess, for Adobe to catch up what it is. That's me. So great. So all this is working the way that I want it to work. This will be Craig, right? You can also use the up and down key to go before each clip. So I did arrow down. This is me, and I can hit 1 on the keyboard. And then I can go to Craig and hit 2 on the keyboard. Now, it doesn't look like it's working. So let's, oh, I see, because this is selected. So let me just unselect that. Go here, and pick 1. There we go. So I just learned something. So make sure they're not selected if you're doing the down arrow, up arrow, the keyboard. Go to Craig, he's 2, right? And this last part, I want 3. I'm going to want our side by side to end out. So those are 2 ways you can very, very quickly go through and select your cameras. Now, once I've selected my cameras, then I go back to the source. Oh, you see how Adobe named this source also? It's very, very annoying. So this really is my, what I'll call my multicam switching. Again, you can call it whatever you want. So I need to go back to my source. And now in here, now that I've finished switching my cameras, I'll go into Craig and I'll pick the noisy dialogue, clean up noisy dialogue. And then I'll go to me and I've created a preset that works for my studio situation. And I'm actually going to mute, I should have done this earlier, I'm going to mute the side by side because I never really want to use that. That comes from Riverside. They put the 2 tracks together, but I want to add audio fixing to each track individually depending on what kind of microphone they're using, where they are, etc. So now if I go back to the audio switching, let's just start here. Our waveforms had disappeared, but now Adobe is doing the audio fixing in the background. and when we output it, we'll get it the way we want. So very important, I feel. Do your switching, then go back and do your audio and video type editing with the source. Okay, so now we're going to go into another way of doing this. I'm going to show you a different way of doing it, not using the wizard, doing this manually. And I was just doing this, and I kept getting confused. And maybe it's just me, I'm just a dummy. It does things in a way that it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know, it's just me, or maybe it's just me. Anyway, I will show you the right way to do it. So I've dropped the clips back in here, and I'm going to pull our sources into the sequence. Now, I want to create a nested sequence. Basically, I want these to be synchronized with each other. So now I'm going to be, I put myself first, put Craig second, and then put the side by side third. And so I'm going to pull these over, and then I'm going to synchronize them. So I'm going to go here, right click, and here I can synchronize just like I could in the Multicam wizard. It's really doing the same thing. I'm going to synchronize by audio. So we go through, and now it's synchronized by audio. And I've also listened to this, and it sounds good. But now I need to multicam edit. So as you can see, it gave it a name of C2 Craig. Now, in my mind, I should actually call this my multicam sources, because these are my sources. These are what's going to push into my multicam. But these aren't the sources. Premiere's going to switch it around. And again, I feel this is wrong, completely wrong, but okay. So I need to call this what it's going to become, which is multicam switcher. So I'm going to call this multicam switcher. And then I'm going to, see it says multicam switcher. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to do nest, and say, what do you want to do with that? Now, this is what I'd expect to save this. If you're creating a new sequence, the sequence should be the switching sequence for my sources here. But actually, this is what you're going to call this. So I'm going to call this multicam. And please put in the comments if you think my brain is wired wrong. I just don't know. Okay, so I'm going to call this what it's going to become, which is really what I was working with to begin with, which is my multicam sources. Fix the audio, that's what I'll be using. So now I have my multicam sources, right? These are the sources in the multicam switcher. So the multicam sources are pointing to this first thing. So I see how that makes sense. That's interesting. Now if I go to sources, I can just open in timeline. Now I have my sources that I can work with to put those audio fixes at the end. And here I have my switcher. But I felt that the way that Adobe handled how I'm processing the information, I didn't like it. But anyway, it is what it is. And I understand it now. And this is a manual way that you can do things without using that wizard. So, okay. So in the wizard, it basically brought you here. But now in this way, at least we have both things open. And I just want to show you that, again, you don't need that other wizard. You can do it in this way. So we're in the switcher, and we right click here, and we do multi-camera enable. And now we can go up to our wrench, and we can select multi-camera view, and we can see our multi-camera view. And we can edit just as we did in the other place. I can do, I can do Control K here to make all the cuts here, and I can go in here. Right now we have both views. I can go in this one, and let's just say just pick me only. Just pull it through. Oh, okay, now it jumps. Now one thing I didn't point out in the other part of the video is that if you want to move these things around, like once you make the rough ones, and I see that I actually want to move this further up, if you press the N key, which will bring up the, where's this thing called, the slip tool or something? I don't know. Anyway, so now you can basically move this so it'll start right here. Actually, so this will allow you to move these so now you look up here, it should cut exactly when I start talking. So we're doing both, and here I am talking. Now I was coughing there, so I could either pick the clip here and do some cutting, or I can mute it in the sources. Watching the sources, right, we want to go here, and I don't want to use the side-by-side audio, so I'd mute it here. So that's why it's important to have, I think, both components of your multicam up, your sources and your switcher, so you go back and forth and do things. Whew, okay. So I hope that this has been helpful. Every time I do this, I learn a little bit more. Boy, I tell you, it's very complicating, and to me, many parts unintuitive, but I just want to show you that how the wizard works. It sort of hides your sources, so you need to bring them back later. You can do it manually, so that way you explicitly create your sources, you synchronize them, then you create your sequence where you can do your switching, and you have your sources there. They can go back and forth, and then I think you should be very confident. At least I'm very confident in my multicam editing, though even today doing this video, there's something that I'd assumed worked one way and it didn't. Anyway, hope this helps. Any comments, please leave them. Thank you.